Well. It looks like BYU apparently reversed their position on allowing gay students to date on campus or as students. But if you watched my last video, I think this will come as less of a surprise. Now, granted, in my last video, I didn't predict this. I didn't say, oh, BYU's going to go back on this or they're going to do whatever. I just assumed that they had come up with a policy between the church and the school that said, we're just not going to worry about gay students dating on campus or whatever. We're just not going to worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. The actual rule is still that you have to live a chaste life, but when it comes to pre-marriage, whatever, if you're heterosexual or you're homosexual, it doesn't matter, as long as you're not having sex, we're just not going to worry about it. I assume that was the position or the conclusion that they came to, and that's part of why they changed it. And what was interesting, though, is I pointed out in that last video that is logically inconsistent with what the church has published in other publications, in other literature that the church has put out. And I'm gonna say I didn't make a video of it, but at the time when the change first happened, I looked at it and I thought to myself, I read the first or the old version of the honor code and I read the new one. I personally didn't see how people were making the connection between the change and gay students dating. Right? In my mind, that's not where I went. I saw that they removed the specific language on homosexual behavior. I read the new honor code. In my mind, I thought it meant the same thing, right? So to me, it was kind of a surprise when I started hearing students, I saw whatever it was, that tweet or whatever of the two girls kissing next to the Brigham Young statue on campus. Right, I saw that, and then I went back and I re-looked at it, and I thought, well, I'm not sure how you're getting that, but whatever. I don't actually care. And then I heard people were going to the honor code office, and that the honor code itself was saying yes, it's allowed. And then I saw the video of Dr. Brow talking to his class and saying how he called the honor code office, talked to a full-time counselor, and that person that he talked to said yes, gay students are allowed to date. So in my mind, I thought, whatever, I don't really care. But that's, eventually after I saw the video of Dr. Brow, that's why I made my video, because I started to think, this is probably what they're thinking. And I kind of moved on, but I just want to point out that this is, I think, a larger trend within the church, and it's gone back a few years. So the change that the church made to 2-hour blocks on Sunday, instead of 3 hours of church, you have 2-hour church. And they put out the Come Follow Me manual, and they're basically saying your education, your spiritual learning, it's primarily on you. It's your responsibility. And we're going to help you. We're going to supplement you. We're going to give you some tools to help you along the way, but it's really up to you. And again, let me tie that into what Joseph Smith said way back in the day when he was asked about governance and how you run, governing the church or governing the people within the church, or whatever the question was. I don't remember. And I'm probably not going to quote this exactly, but I'm sure you've heard it. Joseph's response to this question about governance is that he, or at least the church, teaches correct principles and they let people govern themselves. So in my mind, when I read the new update, the honor code update, I thought in my mind, okay, they're taking out the prescriptive language, but the stance of the church, the position on giving expression to homosexual behavior is still the same, right? So it doesn't matter that they have removed the specific language behind it. It's still there, right? And I understood that, or at least that's what I thought I understood, until I started seeing the honor code office apparently telling students that it was okay to date. So you can go back and watch that video I did about that to get more context into that. But I saw this article about unwritten rules can cause a lot of harm at BYU, and I think that this is This is particularly valid because I don't think that this idea of the church teaching correct principles and letting people figure it out for themselves, I don't think that necessarily is going to work at BYU and the honor code. I just don't, with this particular issue and the LGBTQ community, I don't think it's going to function the same way, and I think there does need to be more prescriptive language. There does need to be more of an outline as to what is and is not allowed, because this is only going to cause problems in a way that I don't think it would be the same, generally speaking, within the church. So this kind of stuck out to me because I do think, at least here at BYU and in a lot of other circumstances, it's not so much that there's unwritten rules that cause problems, but there's also rules and then unwritten exceptions to those rules. And I think that's a huge issue, but that's completely different from this topic, so we're not going to get into it. But I think those are kind of in the same category, especially here at BYU with the honor code and the issues with the gay dating and the LGBTQ community. But that's just the general outline of this article. Something I wanted to point out, though, and this is a relatively separate topic, so I'm not going to get into it too much, but I did want to point this out, that these two paragraphs here, for many years, the Honor Code has been broadcasting discriminatory values and practices that are harmful towards LGBTQ students. Outside athletic and academic organizations have found these values and practices disturbing. Recently, the Classical Association of the Middle West and South rescinded its offer to hold its 2023 meeting on the campus of BYU Provo because of the impact of BYU's policies on LGBTQ colleagues and the conflict between those policies and CAMWS's own policies on diversity and inclusivity. So, I probably didn't have to read that whole thing. The idea here is that these organizations, and again, I don't think I made a video of it, but there were two, I don't know what they were, academic societies, two research societies. I think one was, geology and whatever, it doesn't matter. There's two groups that said they're no longer going to collaborate with BYU, or they're not going to work with BYU. Something about how, because of BYU's stance on gays, on LGBTQ people, that they're just not going to have anything to do with us. I am going to make a prediction. I think that is going to get worse. I think it's going to get more prevalent, and it's going to impact more people. And what I mean by that is I think that in the future there will be companies that recruit from BYU, they recruit BYU graduates. I think that will eventually stop. I think that companies are no longer going to accept students from BYU. And the reason being, the company can't, right there, left, right, and center, all major organizations are being accused of racism, sexism, bigotry, misogyny, homophobia, whatever the issues are. They're just being accused of it. Left and right and center, I already said that. The problem is when they are hiring students from a homophobic institution, such as BYU, and granted, I'm not calling BYU homophobic, I'm saying that is the perception of the LGBTQ community, right? So the argument is going to be, how can you possibly say that you're standing up for diversity and you're standing up for inclusivity and you're fighting for the LGBTQ community? How could you, as a company, claim that you're doing all these things while hiring people from a homophobic institution? Right? That's how the argument's going to go, and I think that's going to become a lot more prevalent, and it kind of worries me in a sense. I mean, I'm going to graduate, I think, before that really becomes an issue, and whether I get a job from someone who recruits on campus or not, I don't particularly think it's going to be an issue for me, but I think in the coming years, 5-10 years from now, I think it will be a major issue that is going to affect the viability of BYU as a school, right? If you come to BYU and you are then, an outcast according to society, right? You show up to your job with your resume, or you submit an application and your resume says attended BYU, I think that you're going to get stonewalled. It's just not going to be worth the hassle in the future. So I spent too much time on that. What I really want to talk about is, I was going to point out a minor logical inconsistency that I thought was funny about this, and the whole idea that people or organizations are going to stop doing business or stop working with BYU because of these issues. So to me, it's funny when they say, we as an organization or an association, whatever, we are inclusive because because we don't have a problem with gay people. We're inclusive, but we're also going to exclude you because of your views, right? It doesn't, it's not logically consistent to say we're inclusive. We are an inclusive society. We love diversity, but we're also going to exclude you because you're different from us. So, and I just wanted to point that out. I think that's really funny that allegedly inclusive societies or organizations or companies or whatever are so eager to exclude people because they disagree on politics or ideology or whatever. I think that's really funny. So here's where, it's already been 11 minutes. So this is where I would like to really spend the bulk of the time. I'm going to try to go through this quick. I'll get everything out, but I'll do it relatively quickly. So on Wednesday, BYU got this letter, and it says, so this is the tweet from BYU. Today, this letter from Elder Paul V. Johnson, Commissioner of the Church Educational System, regarding the updated honor code was sent to students and employees at all CES schools. And I'm going to read this. So it's dated. It says, to students, faculty, and staff of the Church Educational System. Recently, the language of the principle-based Church Educational System Honor Code was updated. Those adjustments included significant doctrinal and behavioral matters that have led to much discussion and some misinterpretation. Out of respect for all concerned, we are providing the following clarifying statement. One change to the Honor Code language that has raised questions was the removal of a section on homosexual behavior. The moral standards of the Church did not change with the recent release of the General Handbook or the updated Honor Code. And again, if you watched my last video, I'll put a link in the description. If you watched the last video, I talked about this and I pointed out in the different literature that the Church has put out that there is an apparent difference, right? And I was trying to reconcile that and say, if gay dating is allowed, then it is a change, more or less, of the moral standards of the Church. And so I pointed out how in some literature it said homosexual behavior is wrong and you can't do it and it's a sin or whatever, but then you read the new honor code and it just takes that out. And I was saying it can't be, something's got to give here, right? You can't say in one paper that homosexual behavior is treated this way, but in this it's treated a different way. So again, this goes back to what I said at the beginning of this video, how this, where did he say it? The principle-based included significant, where did it say it? Oh, right here. Recently, the language of the principle-based Church Educational System Honor Code, right? So it's based on principles, and just because the prescriptive language was removed didn't mean that anything actually changed regarding the principles, regarding the moral standards. So I'll keep reading. The moral standards of the Church did not change with the recent release of the General Handbook or the updated Honor Code. There is, and always has been, more to living the Lord's standard of a chaste and virtuous life than refraining from sexual relations outside of marriage. And this is something that there was I think it was 2015, there was a policy update. I don't remember what it was, but basically there was an announcement from the Church that said the non-chastity violations or whatever. Basically, I don't remember the exact wording. It just said that heterosexual and homosexual sins are going to be treated the same, right? If you have sex outside of marriage if I am a guy, so if I have sex outside of marriage with a woman, that is going to be treated the same as far as the disciplinary action and the church membership council and all the stuff that goes along with that. I will be treated the same whether I had sex with a woman or had sex with a man. So this is, I think, directly targeting that idea that just because it's treated the same doesn't mean that there's nothing more to the law of chastity. And so, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but I'm going to read the next sentence. So, lasting joy comes when we live the Spirit as well as the letter of God's laws. A foundational doctrine of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ is that marriage between a man and a woman is ordained of God, and that the family is central to the Creator's plan for the eternal destiny of his children, which is from the Family of Proclamation to the World. Church leaders have long taught these principles. Same-sex romantic behavior cannot lead to eternal marriage and is therefore not compatible with the principles included in the Honor Code. We are grateful for the commitment that all students and employees in the church educational system make to live the principles and spirit of the Honor Code. So, this came out on Wednesday. This is what everyone is saying, oh, the church went back on their policy, but I think that's a disingenuous way of looking at it to say they went back or they reversed their position. I think the correct interpretation is that this has always been the policy, and it is a huge blunder on the part of the Honor Code office at BYU to have allowed counselors or whoever it was that was saying that gay students can date now. I think that is a huge fault on, I don't know necessarily if those particular people as individuals are at fault, because I'm sure they asked their boss and their boss said whatever. I read something about how the director of the Honor Code office, something his last name's I forgot his name. He, after the change happened, I heard reference, now I haven't actually seen a quote or anything, I've just heard that people, someone, student, faculty, whoever, asked the director directly if this meant that gay students could date, and he allegedly said something along the lines of, yes, gay students can date. So I don't know where the miscommunication happened between the principle-based honor code system essentially saying the same in regards to whether or not gay students can date on campus, and the miscommunication between that and whoever in the Honor Code office decided of their own accord that, no, it does mean that you can date, right? It's a huge problem, it's a huge blunder, and it's not a good look for the church because they got a lot of attention, a lot of press from changing the Honor Code and allowing gay dating, and now it does look as if they're going back because no one's going to give them I think the honest interpretation of this is how it's always been. And basically the view I'm getting, at least from all the news clips I've seen, is they're saying that the church, or at least BYU, is going back on allowing gay students to date, when what actually happened is they never went forward, I guess, on allowing gay students to date. They just changed the language, and someone somewhere decided that would mean something different than what the church actually intended. That misinterpretation got spread like wildfire because obviously everyone was excited about it. They wanted it to be true, and they just went with it, which I don't blame them. I don't blame the students or anyone that went to the Honor Code and asked them for clarification, and then they said, yeah, you're allowed to date. I mean, that. So there's all kinds of problems with that. But I wanted to point out this specific letter, and then I'm going to spend just a little bit going through the comments on this because it's something I'll just highlight a few, and then I might do a separate video specifically addressing the response to this, because I think it's telling of, well, I want to say the lack of thinking that goes into this, and I think a lot of it is the lack of giving someone that you disagree with the benefit of the doubt. So this guy pops up a few times, I don't know who he is, but he's happy about this clarification. So this is kind of funny. Where did I want to get? I'm not going to play this or the audio, but they're just saying, hey ho, the honor code's got to go chant. So, and again, that's kind of a separate issue, just removing the honor code versus changing the honor code. Okay, so this is something I am going to point out because I do think it's funny. We're getting to 20 minutes. So I'm going to do this one and maybe one more. This guy here, his comment, he said, I mean, most heterosexual romance at BYU also does not lead to eternal marriage, but sure, let's go with that. So this is a fault in logic, because the idea that he's suggesting is that because each and every person that you date, you don't end up marrying, therefore dating doesn't lead to eternal marriage. I don't, maybe just rephrasing it in that way is enough maybe for him to see the fault in what he's saying, that because you don't marry each person you date, therefore dating doesn't lead to marriage. Obviously, dating leads to marriage. Just because you don't marry each person that you date doesn't mean that you're not improving as a person as far as your ability to be a good partner, and you're not also, I guess, fine-tuning what you are looking for, what makes you happy, what you're wanting in a future spouse. Right? The idea of dating is designed to lead to marriage. Dating does lead to marriage. So this is kind of funny. And I honestly, some of these are new since the last time I looked at it before I started recording. So stupidest comment on Twitter today. Congrats, you win. That's kind of funny. If you think that's the dumbest comment on Twitter, you clearly don't use Twitter much. Okay, I'm not going to read all these. I want to, oh man, there was another guy that said, I thought it was in this, he replied to that guy, but it must have been somewhere else. I'll just paraphrase what he said, because I'm not going to spend the time to find it. Basically, the idea is that, right, so he says most heterosexual romance doesn't lead to eternal marriage. Someone else commented and said that neither does marrying a non-member, right? If you're not a member of the church, then you can't get married in the temple, and if you're not sealed in the temple, then you're not going to have an eternal marriage that lasts beyond this life. Again, that is, I think, a misinterpretation of what Elder Johnson is saying up here, and I'll explain why. For one, I am going to point out, I think it's in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, it says something about how the man sanctifies the woman and the woman sanctifies the man in marriage. Again, I'm not a huge New Testament scholar, but I do believe I've talked about this before with other people and try to get clarification on that. That is specifically referring to, if I'm correct, the idea of members and non-members marrying, and how if you are married just civilly and it's not an eternal sealing in the temple, after this life you will still be able to have the opportunity to connect with them through an eternal marriage, through being sealed. If you're married to another man or another woman, there's not going to be that opportunity in heaven after this life, right? You don't get that opportunity with someone of the same sex. But even though you're not married in the temple here on earth, doesn't mean that you're not going to get married to either the same person or, whatever, another man or a woman in heaven. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but the idea that a member and a non-member marrying is not leading to eternal marriage, that's not necessarily true either. So we are 24 minutes in. I think I'm just going to do another video that highlights specifically the reactions that people have had to this and what I think is wrong with the way that they're approaching the situation. And again, and I'm not trying to say, oh, they're wrong and I'm going to destroy them or whatever. I think that this is a huge problem, that there's a miscommunication between what the church is saying and how people interpret what the church is saying. And so that's what I want to try to clarify, and not necessarily saying, oh, the way you read this letter is wrong. I'm just saying that the way you're interpreting it is what's causing a lot of the confusion, the hurt, and the heartache that's going on in here. And it's leading to, I think, a lot of false hope in a lot of ways. So I want to just try to clarify that for the people who are being negatively impacted by this, because I think it will help. I think it will help clarify some of these issues and help people find a way to think about this in a better way, in a positive way, or at least in a way that doesn't cause, whatever, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. Because I don't think that's a good thing, and I want that to be something that I hope that I can fix anyway. The last thing I'll say is that I appreciate you watching the video. I really do. If you made it this far in, congrats. And hopefully, you go back and you watch my other video about this topic or any of the videos. I think that would be nice to get some context to what I'm building on in this video. And hopefully you leave a comment. I would really like to hear what you think about this and my take on it, I guess, because it's one thing to hop on Twitter and read these, but I'd rather start a new conversation about this topic, but with what I'm saying about it, not just the general chaos that's going on. So please leave a comment, and hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.